It's not really that bad. It could be worse. You're not sick enough for help. The doctor said, you must be an athlete. Because my heart rate was relatively low at resting, they concluded that I must just be a very active person and an athlete. And I said, well, yes, I am. I'm a dancer because I was. And so I thought that explained it. And again, I was validated by medical professionals that I was okay. I wish someone had told me then that eating disorders are not about the physical. You're listening to the Recovered-ish podcast. I'm your host, Chloe Cox, and yeah, I know a thing or two about eating disorder recovery. Between my own very complicated history with disordered eating and the work I do now, I've seen this thing from pretty much every angle. This podcast is where we talk about the messier parts of recovery that don't really make it online. No platitudes, no inspirational quotes, just the real, raw, sometimes frustrating, sometimes surprisingly liberating process of building a life beyond your eating disorder. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to Recovered-ish. I cannot believe this is already the 4th episode. I gotta tell you, I'm having so much fun with this. And even more than just sitting down and talking to all of you, it's been so fun to connect in the DMs and over on my Instagram. We have been already covering some really heavy hitter topics. I mean, week 1, we essentially talked about is it even possible to recover? Week 2, I shared my story. Week 3, on the day I'm recording this, episode 3 comes out tomorrow. I'm so scared to post it. I think maybe that's just because I really care about the way that the message will be received. So I hope that it's helpful. I guess I'll see what y'all think tomorrow. I weekly on my Instagram post a poll for all of my followers and kind of gauge, what do all of you need? What conversations do you want to have? What topics are most important to you? If you don't follow me on Instagram, it's at Recover with Chloe. Please come and join that community so you can also be involved in choosing the topics that we cover here on the pod. Last week, the poll was overwhelmingly in favor of covering this one topic. You've clicked on the episode, you know what we're talking about. And I guess I shouldn't really be surprised that it was the overwhelming choice, because so many people that have followed my account commonly say, wow, I didn't realize I had an eating disorder before I heard you talking about it like this, or dang, I didn't realize this wasn't normal. This is really opening my eyes to the fact that this could actually be a problem. When all of you responded that you wanted me to talk about this topic, I was like, okay, this is a heavy one. This is a big one. And I think it's a commonly felt barrier for anyone that's had an eating disorder. So I hope that you all are seated, whether you listen in the car or you're watching here on YouTube. This is going to be one to settle in with and maybe get out your journal a little bit, because we're going there. We're going there. Today, we're talking about the lie that your eating disorder has likely told you, maybe still tells you, that it's not really that bad. It could be worse. You're not sick enough for help. As I speak those words out loud, I am immediately transported back to the early days of my eating disorder, when I actually thought I was doing something good for myself. I think people don't talk about this, that usually when you develop an eating disorder, it starts from a well-intentioned place. Maybe not the case for everyone, but for a lot of us, it starts from this idea of, I kind of want to be healthier. I want to maybe eat a little bit better or exercise more. That's what's healthy, right? You're trying to be healthy. And so you start to develop these habits and you start to read up on what's good for your body, what's bad for your body. You start to develop these rules of, I can eat this, I can't eat that. Maybe you start to count calories. Maybe you start to track macros. Maybe you see results. Maybe you don't. But you think, okay, I'm on the right track. I should keep going. It starts from this well-intentioned place of, I want to better myself. Whether that's from an intention planted in you by society, from a degree of self-hate, or truly wanting to feel better, It doesn't really matter. Our intention is not to harm ourselves. There is this honeymoon phase where the eating disorder feels really good. It's kind of that line between developing a new habit and problematic rigidity. If any of you struggle with perfectionism in the way that I do, man, does it feel good to check a box. It feels great to tick an item off my to-do list or to meet some sort of goal that is concrete. That feels really nice. It feels really good. So you're getting these dopamine hits. Truly, that's what's happening in your brain when you do these things. This is where we get into the sciencey bit. This is the beginning of your brain being rewired, where the reward system changes. When you have an intuitive relationship with food where you can listen to your body responds positively when you feed it. You experience hunger, you give yourself food, there's a dopamine release, you feel good. The thing that starts happening when you have an eating disorder is that system gets all out of whack. Because the perfectionist part of you or the goal-oriented part of you is running the show, when you hit a goal determined by the eating disorder, that starts to release dopamine in the brain, which directly contradicts the way your body is actually wired to behave. So instead of feeling a rush of dopamine when you eat, when you feel full and satisfied, you feel a rush of dopamine when you restrict yourself or when you exercise for a certain amount of time, or even when you do other forms of compensatory behaviors, making yourself sick. Those things actually do provide relief in the body because your brain has started to respond opposite to the rest of the world. So I say this because that's where this idea that it's not bad really begins. It's a physiological change that happens in your body and in your mind. More often than not, people don't develop eating disorders because it feels really bad. Actually, it starts to feel really good. There is that golden moment in time where you're engaging in your eating disorder. Maybe you're seeing your body change in ways that makes you happy. It feels like you're doing something right. It does not feel like you're doing something wrong. Then you start to feel a little confused. There is this time where it kind of crosses the threshold from being a little disordered but manageable. Okay, no pun intended, but the scales are starting to tip. This is actually taking more out of my life than it's bringing to me. Maybe you're noticing your thoughts are always centered on food, your body, your weight, your exercise. And that used to feel good and exciting because you were working towards a goal. And now it feels like you can't not think about it. You try to think about other things. It's very hard. Or maybe you have a moment where you go to somebody's birthday party and for the first time you actually feel anxiety when you're offered a piece of cake. It's like, oh, maybe it shouldn't feel this way. But then you rationalize it, right? You think like, no, it's good. It's good that I don't want to have that piece of cake. I shouldn't have that piece of cake. All these other people that are having that piece of cake, I'm better than them. Maybe that's probably a topic for another day too, that superiority complex part of it. I know a lot of you resonate with that too, in a icky, like secret thought that you don't ever want to say out loud, but like quietly exists. But you start to have that back and forth of like, maybe this is a problem. This doesn't quite feel as good as it used to. I probably should be able to have a piece of cake every now and then. It shouldn't make me feel afraid, right? You start to question it just a bit, but then that other part of you comes forward and says, no, you're actually stronger because you don't have that cake. It's not that you're afraid of it. You just don't want it because you know that it's going to go against your goals. You're starting to feel the difference, like the separation between the true you that's getting skeptical and this other part that's getting stronger and more convincing, because guess what? It's also backed up by dopamine. You feel relief when you don't have the cake. You feel fear when you do. So that's confusing, isn't it? On a psychological and physiological level. This is that weird period of time where if somebody came to you and said, hey, Chloe, I'm noticing that you're kind of avoiding having XYZ foods. You used to love eating that. Are you all right? Maybe that would get to you. Maybe that would help you think, okay, this is a problem. Or that might feed the eating disorder as well. Or you might double down and get defensive and be like, no, it's not that. I just don't want those things because I know it's not good for me. I've changed in ways that should be admired, not in ways that people should feel concerned about. It's very difficult to validate when it becomes problematic because you spend a lot of time until it gets to that point feeling good and noticing that you feel bad or anxious or fearful when you disobey this new goal-oriented part of you. The eating disorder feels good. Defying it feels bad. Your brain changes. You convince yourself it's actually a good thing. That's why when other things start to go wrong or it seems to level up in severity, it still can be hard to see it as bad. For those of you that listened to episode 2, you know that when my eating disorder was at its worst, I was away from home. I was traveling the country. I was not in a safe and supportive environment. I wasn't around people that knew me well. So the changes that were happening with me, with food, with my body, whatever, were largely going unnoticed because people didn't have anything to compare it to. Not to mention, most of the time I was eating by myself. So not a lot of people saw. But I do remember one day I was on a Broadway national tour. The people that you hung out with were mostly cast members. We were in Florida and everybody was going to the beach. I was nervous about going because I would have to put on a bathing suit and people would see my body. But I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to go. I'm going to try to have fun. So I went and someone did comment on my body and it was a compliment. At that point, that was the last thing I needed to hear because in my head, I was gearing up to say to myself, this can't go on. I was starting to realize this is really bad. I think I'm very sick. I think I need help. And I was getting ready to quit. I was getting ready to say, enough is enough. I know this isn't good for me anymore. But someone seeing my body and actually saying like, wow, I remember the compliment was something like, you have such a cute little body, Chloe. And I was like, nobody else thinks this is a problem. They see my body and they think it's good. So it's good. It's fine. No one else is concerned about you. In fact, they're jealous of you. That's what the evil part of me started to say. And so once again, the true me that knew how I was feeling day in and day out, suffering, depressed, mentally in a prison, my eating disorder part told that part to just shut up because guess what? You look great and that matters more. And if you were actually sick, people would see your body and say, oh my gosh, you look awful. Get her to the hospital. Like that's what I was thinking would happen. And if that wasn't happening, then I wasn't sick enough. I should be able to figure this out myself. And all the things that I was doing to harm myself weren't actually that harmful. So that was what my brain was telling me in response to this. This was made worse. And I know that many of you have had this experience too, as we've talked about in comments and DMs. This was made worse by an experience I had later that week with a doctor. The therapist I was seeing virtually, my dietitian that I was seeing virtually while on the tour, asked me to go to an urgent care just to get my vitals checked, make sure that I was in a medically okay place. So begrudgingly, I did. They weighed me, they took my blood pressure, took my heart rate, and I saw all these stats. Knowing what I know now as an eating disorder therapist, recovery coach, I've been in this field for some time. I know that what was said on that piece of paper was not good. There were signs that I was not doing well. And the doctor said, wow, you must be an athlete. That's what the doctor told me. Because my heart rate was relatively low at resting, they concluded that I must be a very active person and an athlete. And I said, well, yes, I am. I'm a dancer because I was. I was validated by medical professionals that I was okay. There was no sign of concern. Everything was fine. Go on your merry way. Not a question about my mental health, not a question about any of those vital signs that could have actually meant that I was suffering. So I bring this up because For many people with eating disorders, there are no physical signs. Your body looks quote unquote normal, your vitals look quote unquote normal, your blood work looks normal. And so you think, if all of that is normal, it really can't be that bad. Then you have a doctor telling you, wow, you're so healthy, actually. Or like, everything is fine, everything is good, clean bill of health. And you think to yourself, wow, I must just be so dramatic that I even thought this was a problem. And it really pains me to think about this week in particular because I was so close to reaching out and calling my parents and telling them, I need to come home. I can't do this anymore. I need to get help. I was so close. And then I was told my body looked good, my vitals looked good, and I was very healthy and fine when I was not. To give you a peek at my inner world that very same week, there was nothing I was thinking about except for food, exercise, weight, and thoughts of wanting to not be alive. That's where I was. And I wish someone had told me then that eating disorders are not about the physical. An eating disorder is a mental illness. It's in the DSM-5. That's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Yes, eating disorders can have physical side effects that can be quite severe and life-threatening. But the definition of an eating disorder is in the mental and emotional impact. I didn't realize that long before I got to that point, I was more than worthy of help, and I was also worthy of that diagnosis. It's just so freaking whack that most doctors do not get education in eating disorder treatment. They don't have the knowledge of the medical signs and symptoms to look for, and they also don't have the knowledge to screen behaviors. If someone is coming to you, and this has happened to so many people that I've talked to, they've gone to a doctor, said, I think I have a problem with food. Their doctor looks at their weight, looks at their vitals, and says, you're fine. Whatever you're doing is totally okay. Don't worry about it. If someone says, I think I have a problem with food, they do. You don't just have that thought out of the clear blue sky. This is taking up more of your life than it should. If any part of you feels like you're thinking about food, worrying about your weight, worrying about your body more than feels manageable, you have a problem. You deserve help. That's what doctors need to understand. They need to be asking the right questions and looking at more than just the data. Which brings me to another point that I know many of you have also experienced: invalidation from mental health providers. And that sickens me, as I am one. But let me just be real with you all. I have a master's degree in therapy, and we spent maybe 1 or 2 days in my entire graduate program talking about eating disorders. This is not uncommon. Similarly, we spent maybe 1 day talking about issues like bipolar or schizophrenia. There just isn't time in a graduate program to go through every single one at length, in depth. And that's why, as professionals, when we go off into the field, it's our responsibility to know our scope of expertise and our scope of practice. I know eating disorders inside and out. I do not know how to treat dissociative identity disorder. If a client came to me and I noticed the signs, which I'm equipped to notice, I would say, okay, you know what? I don't think we're a good fit. I'm going to refer you out to somebody that is. That's my responsibility as a provider. If someone came to me with alcohol addiction and they were saying, I think I have a problem with this, it's wreaking havoc in my life, I would not tell that person, you're fine. You're totally fine. When they just told me, I think I have a problem, I know that it's subjective. Every person has a different inner experience with whatever they're going through. In that instance, it's my responsibility to recognize I'm not an expert in addiction and refer that person to somebody that is, so they can get proper care. The reason I'm bringing this up is so many of you have spoken about experiences like this with people that are mental health professionals that you would hope and think know better and would be able to give you validation that you deserve. And that doesn't happen. And I'm sorry on behalf of every therapist. Like, I am really, really sorry. You don't deserve that. But I want you to hear that it's not about you and it's not about the severity of your disorder. It's about this provider not understanding eating disorders. It doesn't mean that you're not bad enough. It means that this person has not done enough to educate themselves to properly treat you or even to recognize an eating disorder when it's sat in front of them. That gets me so fired up. You all know from my first episode that I saw a therapist first that wasn't an eating disorder specialist. I didn't know at the time that there were different types of therapists for different types of problems, people that specialize in niche issues. If you've tried therapy before and it hasn't felt effective, I would encourage you to try it again and find somebody that you feel like really understands you and that you gel with. Like 70% of your progress in therapy is related to your relationship with your therapist. So that is at the forefront. That's primary. Adverse experiences that invalidate the eating disorder really do a lot of damage in creating this narrative that there's one way to have an eating disorder right. And if you aren't fitting that definition, it's not that bad and you don't need to get help. Other people have it worse, and those should be the people working with a specialist. Those should be the people that are in treatment centers, not me, because people told me my body was fine, looks good. Doctors told me my vitals are great, I'm super healthy. It's not an issue of your eating disorder not being bad enough. It's an issue of eating disorders being widely and grossly misunderstood. Okay, well, now we have to talk about my personal pet peeve, which is ironic because I am technically one of them. But this brings me to the landscape of recovery influencing and content creation. Before we continue, I wanted to take a moment to let you know about something I created for people who want real, lasting eating disorder recovery, not just insight, but skills. My recovery skills training is a structured, step-by-step course designed to help you actually change how you relate to food, your body, and your overall identity. This is a 12-week course where you'll move through 12 modules that cover managing food guilt and fear, rebuilding body image without obsessing over it, finding and keeping motivation when recovery feels stuck, developing what I call internal leadership so the eating disorder no longer runs the show, creating a truly balanced relationship with exercise, learning how to take recovery into real-life situations, meals out, holidays, social gatherings, and everyday stress. You'll also get a 100+ page workbook with practical exercises, reflection prompts, and tools you can return to again and again and again. Alongside the weekly lessons, the course includes audio meditations to help regulate your nervous system, recovery toolkits you can use in real time, scripts for boundary settings with family, friends, providers, and belief rewiring exercises to untangle food rules and diet culture programming. It's really got it all, and it's the course I needed when I was stuck in my eating disorder. Importantly, recovery skills training is meant to work with therapy, not replace it. It gives you the skills and the tools that you need so that in therapy, you can focus on the deeper healing. If you're listening to this podcast, you can use the code PODCAST for a listener-only discount of $57 off this course. You'll find the link in the show notes or the link in my bio on Instagram. All right, let's get back to the episode. And just, I guess, social media in general. My algorithm, I can't stand. I'm on Instagram because that's where I connect with all of you. That's where I provide this information and connect with clients. And that's my use of Instagram, purely community-based, really, and connected to my business. Because I post what I do about eating disorders, I get a lot of recovery content on my For You page. There are some amazing recovery creators, therapists that I super admire, other people that are just really artistically inclined that have beautiful things to say about recovery. And then we have the very well-meaning, I do believe, extremely pure-hearted people that post their recovery journeys in ways that can be super triggering. What I'm talking about is the videos of them sick and the videos of them recovered, or the what I eat in a day is in recovery, showing whatever is going on with their food. It's not often that you see people in these recovery influencer spaces that show themselves in the eating disorder in a body that appears to be in a quote unquote healthy weight range. Most of what we're seeing online are people that are severely underweight and recovering into a body that is less underweight. I really feel for every single one of these people, of course, because I know what it feels like to be there in the depths of an eating disorder. I do believe that what they're showing is from an intention to instill hope, and they deserve to feel proud of their progress. Absolutely. But I think the impact of it has to be talked about. Even to this day, when I see content like that, part of me thinks, wow, I should have gone harder. Wow, I really wasn't bad enough. She's better at her eating disorder than me. What whack thoughts? Like, what crazy thoughts to be having? I'm 30 years old, 10 years recovered, and when I see someone in an underweight body, that eating disorder part of me still says, you didn't do it right. You weren't that sick. Like, what the heck? So the fact that I'm even having that initial gut response, which of course it doesn't really impact me, I don't engage with it. It's just that voice that we've talked about. Those of you that are in early stage recovery or just coming to terms with the fact that you might have an eating disorder, seeing that kind of content does nothing good. It's just triggering. And I know the word triggering is overused on social media, but in this context is true. It triggers the thoughts of, well, my eating disorder doesn't look like hers. My body doesn't look like hers. And so it's not bad. It's fine. What I'm doing is okay. I'm being dramatic and silly and stupid, even, that I think that this is a problem. Get over it. Or even worse, eat less, work out more. You're not doing the eating disorder well enough. You're failing at the eating disorder. That's the barrage of self-criticism and hate that it unleashes upon people. I know I keep saying it, but I'm really not trying to hate on these creators because they have a right to tell their stories. Of course they do. I just think we really need to consider the impact that seeing those images has. It reinforces the narrative that an eating disorder is a white, underweight woman in her teens or early 20s. And that is not the case, people. Eating disorders do not discriminate. Eating disorders exist in all bodies, all races, all social classes, all gender expressions, all ages. My goodness, I mean, I'm 30 and I'm a mom, and I'm grateful that I've been able to connect with so many of you out there that are in similar life stages or beyond that voice this, that there's so much help for girls that are in their teens or their early 20s. And there's not a lot of people talking about eating disorders in like your true adult life and your midlife and in even old age. That still exists. It doesn't matter how old you are. But again, when we have such a narrow picture of what an eating disorder looks like, when there isn't representation of all forms of eating disorders in all bodies, we start to think this isn't really a problem. It's not bad enough. And then you stay stuck and you don't get help and you suffer a lot. So we can look to our environment and the landscape of social media and the comparison that happens there, the input that we have from medical professionals and mental health professionals and people in our lives that reinforce that we're fine. We can look at all of that as something that adds to the narrative of it's not that bad, like it could be worse. You should be able to take care of this yourself. We also have to look at the eating disorder agenda here. Something that's always been very helpful for me in my recovery is separating myself from the disorder as two different voices. And I know a lot of you conceptualize this in the same way. When I was in treatment, I learned to call one part of me my healthy self and one part of me the eating disorder self. Some people even gave them names. A lot of people called the eating disorder Ed. I had a client that called their eating disorder Edwina. I thought that was pretty cute. Separating myself from the Ed or from Ed helps me to take a step back and understand my personal agenda, what I actually want for myself, what I actually need, what's true, what the eating disorder wants. Even more than that, it helps me to understand the master plan of the eating disorder. I have always felt like the eating disorder is some parasite in my brain that I can't get out. I do remember a time before and after, like when the switch got flipped in my mind. And so it feels like this invader in my headspace that has some sort of idea of the way that my life should be for some particular reason that makes sense in the beginning and then stops making sense when it's really examined. When you separate what you want from what the eating disorder wants, you can see the ways that they conflict. My healthy self, of course, wants me to be healthy. My eating disorder will say, yeah, I want you to be healthy too. Meanwhile, telling me that I should be eating very little food to the point of mental torment. That doesn't make sense, does it? No, it does not. It is in your eating disorder's best interest that you believe the disorder isn't that bad. If you think of the eating disorder like a parasite or a separate kind of organism, of course it's going to want you to think it's not a problem. If you think it's a good thing, it gets to stay alive. If you think it's no big deal, it gets to continue controlling you. Like this alien mind invader gets to live another day because you don't think that it's bad. I can promise you that is not coming from your healthy self. That's coming from the eating disorder. The crux of it is that eating disorders survive on delay. If we rewind in my story to the very beginning where I decided to start focusing on my food a little bit more and maybe exercising a little bit more to be the best I could be, if the moment that I wanted to have a piece of cake and it made me cry, if in that moment I said, this is a problem, and I said, Mom, I need therapy, and I started treatment, she would have been, my eating disorder was a little baby at that point, like tiny bebe, and would have been nipped in the bud, hopefully, and it would have been a little blip on my timeline. That didn't happen because the eating disorder had this alternative narrative of, no, it's a good thing. No, it's fine. You're fine. This isn't a big deal. You just don't eat cake. Whatever. So I didn't say it's a problem. So I didn't say I need help. But if I had intervened, the lifespan of my eating disorder would have been much shorter. It survives on delay. It thrives the more time that you let it live. So giving it that time allowed it to take over more and more of my life, filling up more spaces, taking over more of my brain. And every day I was becoming less in control and the eating disorder was becoming more in control, all because of this lie that it wasn't that bad. If your eating disorder can stay alive quietly long enough, it will ruin your life. And that's the whole goal of the eating disorder. If we think of it as this alien invader, what is the goal of an alien invader? It's to take control over everything, have all the power, and essentially annihilate the human race. Your eating disorder is the same. It's living in your brain, doing everything it can to stay quietly alive until inch by inch, slowly by slowly, it controls everything about who you are, and you cease to exist. Your identity is annihilated. And for some, it even takes their lives. That's why this is so serious. That's why I'm so passionate about this. It's not bad enough. Yes, that lie is supported by the stories that we pick up in our world, by the information that we get, by the comparison, by medical professionals. It's supported by that, but it originates from the disorder. The disorder needs you to believe it's not that bad, or you would get help and you would take care of yourself. If you don't believe me, I want you to look up this word, anosognosia. I'll put it in the show notes. The definition of anosognosia is this, and this comes up a lot in eating disorders. Anosognosia is a loss of insight. It is a neurological issue that occurs when someone is unable to be truly aware of their mental or physical disability. This is what happens when you have an eating disorder. Many people experience this sense of complete denial. It's more than denial. It's an inability to know that it's bad. And that's what happens when it gets the most severe. This lie doesn't become just a lie that you try to refute. It becomes a truth and you are unable to have insight. That's where it gets so freaking scary, you guys. You get to the point where you do not know that you're sick, and no matter what anyone says, no matter the medical data, it does not matter. You cannot see that your eating disorder is even a thing. So if you're a support person listening to this and you're like, yeah, that's what my loved one is going through, my heart goes out to you so much, because there really isn't a whole lot you can say to make the person see when they have entered this state. And I'd be happy to do a full episode for caregivers and support people in coming weeks. It's not pretty. It's so hard. But that's why I really want you to hear this. If there's any inkling of this feels like sort of a problem, but I don't think I'm bad enough, but I don't think I'm bad enough is your eating disorder. I think I might have a problem is what is true. Your eating disorder needs you to believe that it's not that bad so it can live another day. The danger of an eating disorder is so much more than what could happen to your body physically. It's the obsession, it's the rigidity, it's the paralyzing fear and the loss of control and of choice in your life. That is dangerous. And the sooner that you validate yourself, even if nobody else is, and I know how hard that is, the sooner you validate that it is a problem, the closer you are to recovery. The longer the eating disorder stays a part of your life, it becomes more and more powerful, and your voice gets diminished to a point of a whisper. It's terrifying to break away from something that has so much power over you. There is one more part of this complex web that nobody likes to say out loud, but I'm going to say it. Sometimes when you have an eating disorder, you want to be sick, or at least a part of you wants to be sick. If you know, you know. If you have had that thought of, I want someone to see me sick, that's a very real thing. We sometimes in an eating disorder, you want your suffering to show. And I know I mentioned in the episode where I shared about my story that part of the function for my disorder was I'm suffering inside and I want my outside to match. In a place of torment in my mental life, and I need my body to show that too. You want to be seen as sick. And I think it comes from a place of either needing to disappear, not wanting to be seen, or really, really wanting to be seen so that you can get taken care of. You can get your needs met. And this is different than what people would call attention-seeking behavior. In fact, I have a problem with that whole concept. If someone is attention-seeking, can we just ask like why they need attention? Maybe they're not getting attention that they need. Anyways, this is more about wanting some proof that your pain counts. And you do what you can to make your body match that pain. And just genetically, some of us will never get to that place of being so underweight that people gasp or that it becomes obvious that you're suffering. There's a lot of biological reasons why some people are predisposed to dropping weight in medically severe ways and other people just don't, even if the behaviors are exactly the same. But I want you to know that, because if you're waiting for your body to match your pain so that it feels real or like it counts, you might be waiting to a point where it's too late. I just want you to know that, because it's true, because you deserve help now. Your body doesn't need to look that way to be deserving of support and care. And the longer you wait, the scarier it gets. But people that understand eating disorders will understand you. If you were in my office right now, I would tell you, I'm so sorry. I see the pain that you're in. I hear it. I know that it's real. And I know how debilitating it is and how much strength it takes to reach out. And I'd tell you, I'm so relieved that you did reach out. I'd tell you, I'm so happy that you're here talking about this, because it deserves to be seen and it deserves to be heard. What you're going through really matters. And I really feel that with every fiber of my being. So I hope that maybe this reaches somebody that needed to hear it. So if you are waiting to be worse, or waiting for permission, or waiting for someone to name the disorder before you, you do not need to earn care by suffering. You are and always have been deserving of that. Okay, well, that was a bit heavy. I hope y'all are still with me. Take home message today is just that. It's a freaking lie if your disorder tells you it's not bad. If you're even at the point where there's a part of you that thinks that it's bad, it's bad. If there's a voice that's telling you that it's not, that's a sign that you have an active eating disorder. It's trying to deny and justify the harm that it's causing. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to introduce a new segment of the podcast that I'm calling Recovery Q&A. Every week, I'm going to be selecting one or maybe two listener questions sourced from my stories on Instagram. So if you don't follow me there yet, check the stories. I'll have a question box posted weekly. You can also alternatively DM me a voice memo if you don't mind your voice being heard on the pod, and I will answer those questions here on the podcast. Today's question comes from one of my followers on Instagram, and she asked, what is the first actual step in recovery? There's a lot of answers that I could say, so I guess I'll say them all. One step would be admitting to yourself that it's an issue. We covered a lot of that this week on the pod. Validating for yourself that it's a thing, and then telling someone in your life. That would be part 2 of that step 1. And that opens up a whole other can of worms. How do you talk to people in your life and tell them that you have an eating disorder if they don't know already? That is really difficult and something that a lot of people need some guidance around. So if that's you, comment down below. I can make a whole episode on that. That would be a step 1 of I have a problem. I'm going to tell someone that I have a problem. Another first step could be, if those two things are already check, reaching out for support. So that would be making the call to a therapist that specializes in eating disorders, finding a dietitian in your area or virtually that you can work with that is also eating disorder informed, very important. That would be another step. If you are like, okay, both of those things sound really scary to me, like, I don't know if I can really voice this to my family yet. I want to make the call to the therapist. I want to make the call to the dietitian, but I feel paralyzed right now and I still want to do something for my recovery. I would say do this. Get out a piece of paper. First, write a full page on what your life would look like morning to night if you were recovered. What this will do is clarify for you all of the different areas of your life that the eating disorder is currently controlling, how that would feel better if you were in recovery. And it gives you a path of what needs to change. Maybe do a little visualization. Think about practically how you want to feel different, how you want to feel around food, how you want to feel in your body, what you would be doing with your time, not thinking about the eating disorder all day. Like, really get detailed, picture that life. That's something that can also instill hope and motivate you to take those next steps. Like, yeah, that recovered life feels far away, but isn't it worth fighting for that? Or at least taking a chance that life could be better? That's something that might get you to pick up the phone and be like, all right, I can't keep living like this. If there's any way that I could even get close to that version of my life, I want to try. Assignment number 2, and this is a bit more practical. Can you make a list of every single rule that your eating disorder has for you? Probably a long list. This might be something to approach throughout your day because a lot of times these rules that we have for ourselves are so ingrained that you don't even think about it. Once you have that list, that is something you can take to your therapist. That's something you can take in to see your dietitian, and they can systematically help you go through and break those rules. Just from a behavioral standpoint, that's a beautiful place to start to just get a little bit more clarity and insight on the ways that your eating disorder is controlling you specifically and how you want to feel in your recovered life. You need hope to take the first step. You either need hope or support. And that's why I say open up to a support person, make that call to a therapist, or do this assignment of what does my recovered life look like to bring a little bit of hope, fuel that motivation, and get in the room with people that understand you. Well, that concludes this week's episode of the Recovered-ish podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I know today was a bit of an emotional one. I certainly felt angry in moments and frustrated at the world and the landscape of how hard it can be to recover and validate yourself. So if you have any thoughts you want to share, any questions that you have, please always leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, wherever it is that you're listening. Would love it and be so grateful if you could give the podcast some ratings and stars so this message can get out to the rest of the world and other people that need to hear it. Love you all so much. Thanks for listening, and we will chat next week.